Is a nonprofit ministry that we started a few months back. We do basically four things. The four things we do is we teach on weekdays at venues. Teach at the Peanut Warehouse in Conway. We have free lunch. You guys are in Conway. We're going to have chicken bog this week, 12 o'clock tomorrow. And you guys stop by, eat, and then we share a word out of the Bible. We do a little Bible study. Typically, the whole thing lasts about 45 to 50 minutes, and we're done. The other thing that we do is we do one-on-one discipleship with people. It's kind of a life coach. Maybe that's kind of a popular term you're hearing today. And third thing we do is we do a corporate chaplain piece, which is where we go in and actually act as a pastor or chaplain for a group of employees. And the fourth thing we do is kind of what I'm doing today, is we do some corporate coaching and we do some teaching professionally. So, in a nutshell, that's kind of what we do. What I'd like to talk to you today is something I just want to make a point to share with you. And that point today is that when emotions are high, reason is low. Maybe you've heard that before. But what happens a lot of times in our lives, a lot of the things that we do based on our emotions. We do it based on how we feel, or the anger that hits us, or the desires we have, and we make those decisions. And generally what happens is the long-term outcomes are not good. Maybe you get a little short-term satisfaction out of blowing up and making that quick decision, but long-term the decision is not a good one. What happens over time is you find out that you regret making the decision in haste, or opening your mouth and saying something that you shouldn't have said. The Bible tells us in Proverbs that a fool basically opens his mouth and spills everything out. And a wise man's going to hold it in until afterwards. In other words, when things calm down a little bit, then the wise man speaks. So he speaks in reason. One of the things I'd like to just share with you is that it's real important that we understand that when we are very emotional about things, that we generally aren't thinking right. It generally comes from something in us that maybe is not quite right. So, for instance, one of the things that, give me an idea of how do you make an emotional decision? I already mentioned anger. What would be another one?
Upset.
Yeah, upset. Anger could be that. It could be something like being stressed. Y'all ever made a decision and said something because the stress level's real high? Or you're anxious about something, or what else?
Time crunch.
Okay, yeah, you're under stress from the time crunch. What else? Okay, you could be excited about something. Maybe, how many of you have ever wanted something? Maybe you wanted a new pistol or rifle or shotgun, and kind of you've heard this. I got the fever. How smart is it when you get the fever to go out and buy something? Usually you don't even care what you spend for it, right? You're just going to buy it, right? Yeah, the fever is a dangerous thing. If you ever feel your fever going up, I'd take something for the fever. But things like jealousy, things like, when you are thinking about things, pride, what other people think of you, or what you want them to think of you. Any of those things can be reasons that our emotions are ruling our thoughts and are driving things. And so what I would just say to you is this, is that what happens is that you end up damaging relationships. In other words, at home with your spouse or with your kids, grandkids. You got grandkids by chance? No, not yet? Well, I've got 3 grandkids, but if I'm not careful with my children and my grandchildren, I can damage that relationship when I act out emotionally and say things. I had an opportunity last night to act out emotionally and say something. 16-year-olds will lie to you. I don't know if y'all know that or not, but they will lie to you. And so I had an opportunity last night to be real emotional, but thank God I didn't. But here's the thing, is that when we act out emotionally and whatever's in our heart just comes out of us, and we don't control it, we hurt people's feelings, we say things we shouldn't say, and then we have to go into damage control mode. And then when things aren't right at home, things aren't right anywhere else, okay? Because when your wife or your spouse, or it's all guys in here, but so when your wife or your kids, that relationship's not right, nothing else is right. And then that transfers and bleeds over into work as well. One of the things that happens is that when you're at work and you got problems at home, or you got things that's happening at home and it's not right there, then what begins to happen is you're not going to be quite as efficient on the job. Your mind's preoccupied. Maybe you're having conversations with other employees. It's not about work. It's about problems at home, problems with kids. And so what begins to happen is that it just bleeds over into every part of your life. And so when that does, then the next thing you know, your whole attitude about how you do things. Yeah, I see some stuff up here from Zig Ziglar and other people, but one of the things that happens is that when our emotions start making the decisions for us, all of our decisions turn to us. It becomes more of a me than a we, because you have to cover up for those emotional decisions you make. And what I mean by that is that when you start making emotional decisions, it's really about you, because it was your pride, it's your stress, it's your anxiety, all those things. That's your anger. All of those things are things that you have to cover up, and if you're not dealing with them, then what happens is that you end up just really hiding it from everybody else and defending it. Does that make sense? You defend your own weaknesses, if that makes sense to you. And so then it kind of perpetuates itself. And so it bleeds over into the job, it bleeds over into everything else. So, how do we fix that? How do we fix that? One of the things that I would just suggest to you is that you need to know what your weaknesses are. How many of you, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot with what your weakness is, but if you've got a weakness, and we all do, okay? How many of you know what your weakness is? You don't have to raise your hand, but think about it. Do you know what your weakness is? Well, if you don't, you need to explore it, maybe even ask somebody. Somebody will probably tell you. Probably somebody in this room could tell you what your weaknesses are, okay? So find out what your weaknesses are and then be ready for them. You need to be proactive in managing those weaknesses. And what I mean by that is don't wait for it to blow up in order to do something about it. It's too late then. You've got to manage it ahead of time. Know that it's coming. Know what circumstances push your button. Know what people push your button. And then when you feel the temperature starting to rise, the best thing you can do is begin to back off from it. Just get away from it so that you don't have to express yourself in a way that you shouldn't express yourself, or do something that you shouldn't do. I mean, it's as simple as, think about this. I'll use something real soft and easy here. You go to buy a car. You got car fever and you want a new car. What's the best thing you can do if you got a new car? Don't ever drive up on the lot, right? Don't do it. Don't drive the car. If you got new car fever, don't go. Well, it's the same thing with your, if you got a child that is not doing something right and you're kind of excited about it and you want to go off on them and put them in their place. Well, you know what? The best thing to do is say, let's talk about it tomorrow. Let's just chill. You're in trouble. We'll talk about it tomorrow. And don't really say what you're thinking, because if you say what you're thinking, you may put a cussing on them, I mean, you may pop them. I mean, you know what I mean? You just get too excited, and no good outcome comes out of that. So the thing is, know what that weakness is, and then try to proactively manage that weakness. Avoid it. And here's the thing. If you're mouthy, if you like to just let people know what you think, best thing to do is put a filter on that. Understand, as soon as my temperature goes up and I want to say something, I need to bite my tongue. I need to think before I speak. Just put that filter on there. See, here's what happens is you and I have to manage our life, and our emotions are a big part of that. We're emotional people. God made us emotional. And so we have got to manage who we are and manage how we relate to other people. When we do that, what happens is that we have a more consistent personality. We're not up here one day and down here the next day. Because listen, if things are going well and you're up here, and then it's, you have something happen and then it drives you down here, the problem is that you're very, very inconsistent in the way you behave and the way people react to you. They don't know what to expect. I mean, you guys go on some sort of service call, or you go to a job and, the superintendent on the job says, man, I don't know what we're getting today. Here he comes. He's getting out the van today. We don't know what we got today. This guy's all over the board. I don't know what to expect. That's just really not who we need to be. We need to be very consistent. People need to be able to see us not going this way, but very even-keeled. And then they know how to deal with us on a regular basis. Same thing at home. Think about it with your spouses, your kids. They need to see that consistency in who you are and who you want to be. And they're only going to see that if you're managing yourselves. If you don't manage yourself and I don't manage myself, then guess what? But here's what happens. You don't realize it, but when you're not managing yourself, you teach your kids and everybody else around you not to manage themselves. So it really, you're responsible for the chaos that's around you, is what I tell people. Because you're the leaders of your homes and leaders of your sales and you're leaders in this company. And so if you're not managing yourself, you're going to have chaos in your life. And when you have that chaos, you're going to be miserable. That's just the way it is. Here's another thing to talk about how to fix it. Let me pass these out here just so you guys got a little something here to look at. Let's talk about when I say something here that I wanted you to see. Pass those out if you don't mind. Right here at the bottom, it talks about the work life here. When you have challenges at home, these are just some points that I made, just some of the things we're talking about. When you have challenge, everybody get one?
I left 2 out.
Drop a couple more back there. He's got extra one there. Okay, listen to this. About midways down, when I talk about results, about middle of the page there, I call it equity erosion. Here's what I mean by that. If you've got a good relationship with somebody at home or even somebody at work, what happens is when you blow up emotionally or you say something emotionally or act out emotionally, the equity you've got built up in that relationship with them, you erode that equity. Does that make sense to everybody? For instance, the boss gets a couple of reports on you that you've said some things, or you fired back off at a customer, or you fired back off at somebody on the job somewhere. The issue is that that erodes your equity with the boss. Same thing with your spouse. You fire off on your spouse, you've got equity built up, maybe y'all been getting along great for 2 or 3 weeks or 2 or 3 months, and all of a sudden you act out emotionally, and when you do, guess what? It erodes the equity that you built up over that 2 or 3 weeks. So point being is, when we act out emotionally, it doesn't really do us a whole lot of good. Look at this other thing that we've got here. On work life, I mentioned there that the challenges, when we have challenges at home, I mentioned that it erodes our performance at work. And that's just the way it is. When you're preoccupied with problems at home, you're not going to be as good an employee. Very simple. Your efficiency declines, concentration declines, and of course your attitude changes. So it's very important to get it right at home. It makes it a whole lot easier to get it right at work. All right, emotion at work. Here's what happens. When we get fired up on the job, we do what works rather than what's right. You ever, you don't have to, some of you are not, okay. Point being is that when we're fired up about things or we're stressed out or emotions driving us, a lot of times we do whatever we need to do to get by rather than doing it right. In other words, I got to get the stress off, I got to get to the next job, so maybe you take a little shortcut just to get it done and get out of there and get everybody happy. It might not be good 6 months from now, but today it works. And so that's one of the things that emotions create in us. It changes our perspective. When we're thinking emotionally, what it does is it changes the way we think. And what happens is it doesn't really matter if it's true anymore. It kind of matters if it's right for me. It works. Okay? That becomes our new truth. So emotions kind of drive us to do what works for us, which not always is the right thing. Sometimes what's right for us right now is not even right for us, period. But it just feels good because it satisfies that emotion that's in us. Go down a little bit, and I say that a better home life will produce a better work life. That's just the way it is. So when we get it right at home, it's a lot easier to focus and get it right at work. All right, the short-term fix, here's what we got there, and I mentioned this a while ago. We recognize that rise of emotion in ourselves and avoid immediate reaction. When it's there and it's present, get away from it, back off from it, and it'll help you in terms of balancing out a good outcome. Okay, the long-term fix there, I say proactively manage your emotions. We mentioned that as well. There's no sense in really talking about this unless we've got some solutions, right? So you're probably saying, okay, that sounds really good. Don't be emotional, but how do you avoid that? First thing I've got there, it's called renewing your mind. Paul in the book of Philippians tells us, and in the book of Romans, he tells us that we're to renew our mind. We've got to think on good things. The thing that happens so often, you and I are influenced by everything in the world, and everything in the world is telling you to do it the wrong way. I don't know if you realize that. The TV shows you watch, the music that you listen to, the billboards you see, everything's telling you to do it the wrong way if you think about it. And you don't really, it's so subtle, you don't think about it. You know, most of the shows that we watch on TV are all telling you how to do it the wrong way, but we enjoy watching them. You know, but the problem is they're emotional, they're drama. It's you know, people doing things outside of what the boundaries of right and wrong are. But we watch them and enjoy them, but that's what's feeding us. So here's the thing: we are what we eat. When we're feeding that stuff from TV, feeding that stuff from the world system, what happens is it begins to change how we think about things. So Paul says we need to renew our mind. In other words, we need to think on things that are think about what I'm getting ready to say here, and apply this as a filter to everything you do, because this is how you protect your mind. Think about this. Paul tells us we're to think on things that are pure. We're to think on things that are lovely, just, honest, things that are of good report. That rules out most of what we see on TV right there, doesn't it? Things of good report, things that bring honor to God, things that bring praise to God. Those are the kind of things that we think on, things that are true. Think about that. Most of what you see on TV, if you're not careful, doesn't line up with any of that. It goes against that. So the problem is if your mind is not thinking on positive things, and it's thinking on negative things, it feeds that negative emotion that comes out in us sometimes. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. All right, I mentioned there's self-control. Here's what happens. Until we begin to know what boundaries are, that's what I said, you need to know yourself, you need to know what your emotions are, you need to know what your weaknesses are. When you begin to know some things, then you can control some things. You can't control what you don't know. So we need to make sure that we know who we are, we need to make sure that we know what our weaknesses are, how we're going to behave, and then we can do something about it. We can begin to control it and exercise some self-control. You know, one of the most important things that we can do in this life is control ourselves. How many of you have ever done something and been out of control when you did it? Okay. Most of you are nodding, hands are going up. Yeah, okay. Good outcome? How did it work out for you? Not good? I remember the last time that I was really and truly out of control, I'm absolutely ashamed of it. I really am. I look back and I'm ashamed of it. I was so out of control that my kids were probably about 7 and 8 at the time. 2 of my kids were. They completely blacked it out of their memory. They don't remember it today. That's how ugly I was. When you talk to them today, they're 30 years old today, but when you talk to them today, they don't even remember it. But I remember it, and it wasn't good. So we need to make sure that we exercise self-control. Here's the thing. You and I need to understand we are hard-headed creatures. Right? We are hard-headed. And it's like turning a battleship. You can't just say today, well, I'm not going to make any emotional decisions anymore. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to filter everything I say, and I'm going to be a good guy today. Start from here on out. I'm going to be great. It just doesn't work that way. I tried it. It doesn't work that way. Okay. What does work is you got to realize you're turning a battleship. In other words, you're going to be a slow turn. It's going to take a while to change. You're going to see changes little bit by little bit. But you've got to make the turn. You got to be like a little tugboat. You got to keep pushing on the battleship. And you'll make that turn very, very slowly, but people will begin to notice. Hey man, you haven't been fired up in a while. Yes. Little baby steps, but that's what it takes. Hey man, you know, you seem to, I hadn't heard you talking about, you know, being broke on Monday. Little baby steps, right? Hey, you and old lady getting along good? Man, things going good with the kids? It's little bit, man. It's just little thing, little bit by little bit. But you got to keep turning the battleship. It just takes time to do it. And you got to just keep working on it. Here's another thing. I said having their exercise to change. It's just like working your muscles. It's just like anything else. Some of you guys have been turning the wrenches for a while. Y'all been taping stuff and putting stuff up for a while. You can do it almost subconsciously, can't you? I mean, do you even think about it? No, you just do it. I mean, you grab that tool, you don't even look at it. You just know where it is, you grab it, and you do it, and you're done. You know, if it's me, man, I'm looking around, does this fit? You know, does this fit? I'll have 20 tools trying to figure out what to do. It takes me an hour to turn a wrench. But here's the point, is that spiritually and mentally, we're the same way. Just like we are physically, it's muscle memory. And the more you are controlling your mind and the more you're turning that battleship, the more you exercise it, the stronger it gets, the easier it becomes, and then it becomes muscle memory. As soon as that emotion, you know, listen, if you've been trying to control your emotions for years, you'll see that situation coming a mile off. Just like I mentioned to you last night, I saw the lie coming from my 16-year-old a mile off. I knew it was coming. So I went ahead and prayed about it because I knew it was going to be confrontational. I knew I was going to hear more lies. I knew she was going to cover up for what she was doing. And I knew that if I wasn't careful, guess what? I might get excited. And I might say something that I shouldn't say, or I might do something that I shouldn't do and have regrets. So I prayed about it. So when the opportunity came, my wife, this morning we were sitting on the couch, she looked at me and she said, I'm so glad we're married. And I said, me too. And she said, because I would have went all over her last night had you not been calm about it. And I said, well, we balance each other. That's what we're here for. So here's the point. You begin to exercise your mind, and as you're exercising your mind, what happens then is that you begin to develop that muscle memory. You'll begin to see that temperature rise and you know how to handle it. And you start doing it just because it's what you always do. Everybody on the same page with me on that? Okay. So here's what I want to leave with you. I've got just a couple minutes, and I just want to leave this with you. And I'll open it up for a question or two. Emotions can drastically alter your life, and usually not in a good way. So when we control our emotions at home and at work, it's going to make you a better person, it's going to make you a better employee, going to make you a better dad, husband, father. It just makes everything better. So here's the thing. Be a thinking person, not an emotional person. People need to know what to expect. When you walk up, they need to see consistency. Listen, every time that you walk up to me and you say, hey, how you doing? I hope I'm going to say wonderful. I hope I don't drop my head like this. I hope I don't tell you a lie. I hope it's from the heart and I say, hey, man, I'm doing wonderful. Because I want to live that consistent life. All right, any questions? I'm going to leave you with that. Any questions at all from anybody or comments?